The college football bowl schedule is out. They've got the times. They've got the new playoff pretty much scheduled out. They already got the dates and the times for all of the playoff games. What does this mean for Georgia? What could possibly transpire over the next few months when the college football season rolls around and you get to later in the year when Georgia's probably playing in the college football playoff, right? It'd be pretty surprising if the Dogs did not make it that far and just didn't become a playoff team. But there's a possibility that Georgia plays. Look, 15 games is kind of the max you could play in the most recent model of college football. 12 regular season games, a conference title game, a semifinal game, and a national championship game. That would add up to 15 games. Well, now you could play those 12. You could end up playing your conference championship game. You could end up playing that home site game, which would be 14. Then you could play a quarterfinal game, which would be 15. A semifinal game, which would be 16. And then a national championship game, which would be 17. So it's in the cards and that could totally happen to Georgia this year. It's a possibility that's not unreal. And a team could end up playing 17 games. Now, I think 17-0 is probably not a realistic record. I don't think that that's necessarily something that could easily happen. I think because of the bye week, you can't really become 17-0. So I think if you go undefeated, 16-0 is probably the deal. If you don't, you can end up playing 17 games. So what does this mean for Georgia? Let's look at the schedule. So this is the cool part. The campus games. Well, if Georgia doesn't win the SEC championship, which, I mean, they haven't won it on a consistent basis, right? Well, since Kirby's been around and they've been in the SEC championship, 17 they win. I'll do that. Win, loss. 17 they win. 18 they lose. 19 they lose. 20 they don't make it. 21 they lose. 22 they win. So 2-4. Two wins, 4 losses. So that's a game that Georgia has consistently or has been inconsistent in, right? A couple lost to Alabama, lost to LSU, right? That's just kind of 3 lost to Alabama and a loss to LSU. That's just how it goes for Georgia in that game. It's going to be different. Now we're going to be dealing with a conference where it's not East versus West, and Georgia doesn't have that free ride. And it might not be Alabama. It might not be Auburn or whoever. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to be Auburn. But it might not be Alabama. Could be Texas in a rematch. Could be Alabama in a rematch. Could be LSU. Could be Missouri if they sneak around and end up with one of the 2 best records in the SEC. Could be, it could be Ole Miss, right? So that game is going to be different. It is different for Georgia. Ryan Coley from Dawg Post talking about the new college football playoff, kind of what the scheduling means and going through it. It's going to be fun. I have not been a proponent of this 12-team playoff. I am a proponent for a newsletter, which I think you should be signing up for real quick and easy, but I haven't been a proponent of the college football playoff. I think 12 is too many. I don't think that this is the perfect setup. Maybe there isn't a perfect setup, but I've been pretty consistent in coming on here and giving my opinion of a lot of the new things going on in college football. When it comes to the playoff, I was more under the opinion, the umbrella of thinking that 8 was perfect. Even 6, I thought would have been better. 12 to me seems like a lot. I don't think that on a yearly basis there are 12 teams that are legitimate national championship teams. And I think if we're being serious, 2 to 4 teams max really show, hey, this is a really legit team. This is a team that could beat any other team in the country. I usually don't think it's really more than 4. That's why I thought that 4 teams was pretty good, and it was an improvement from 2 with the BCS system. But obviously, look, money's involved, right? And that's really one of the biggest drivers of this. But then we did kind of finally get to a situation last year where, well, you could argue that there are more than 4 teams. And that was kind of what it was like in 2014, the inaugural season of the 4-team playoff. You remember that TCU team, that Baylor team, right? Those being on the outside looking in and Ohio State slipping into that 4 spot. And I'm blanking now on who else it was. Oregon, Florida State, Ohio State, and Alabama. So then you get this 12 team. You get the expansion. And I think 6 or 8 makes more sense, but 12 will get us, a Notre Dame in there again in another way. But now Ole Miss, Missouri. I'm trying to think of some of the other schools. Oklahoma State, Utah, right? That could be kind of on the outside looking in. Teams that, hey, if they don't win their conference, it's not completely over. Maybe if you only drop 2 games, 1 game, then I think 3 is probably pushing it. They'll have an opportunity to compete for a national championship at the playoff stage. It will be awesome because it means more football, and so I am on board with that. If Georgia does not win the SEC championship, it's going to play on either Friday, December 20th, or Saturday, December 21st. So on Friday, there's going to be 1 game at 8 o'clock on ABC or ABC/ESPN. I think that probably just means ABC, although they could just throw that. It'd be electric. Right? If Georgia ends up playing a Friday night home game, I will. Here's another thing I'll say. So if you are a top 4 seed, you want a conference championship. So if Georgia wins the conference championship, they'll have a first round bye. They won't have to deal with these campus games, and they'll get automatically put into one of 4 bowl games, which I will list out what they're going to be this year because it's going to be different. That's what you get. Now, if they don't win, and I'm under the impression Georgia's going to be really, really good, they're probably going to be, seeds 5 through 12 are going to be the non-champion, with 1 being a champion, an at-large champion. But it's my impression that if Georgia doesn't win the SEC, it's most likely not going to be ranked lower than 6 or 7, if I had to guess. So teams 5 through 8 will get home games, and teams 9 through 12 will be traveling to play teams 9 through 8. So I have a hard time thinking that Georgia's going to fall past 8 in this thing. Even if they lose a couple games, I do think that Georgia is probably going to be considered one of the top 8 teams in college football. So I think that if they don't win the SEC championship, most likely you're getting a home playoff game in Athens, which would be an incredible environment. Obviously, for all of these college towns, that'd be kind of a new thing, at least any time recently. And so Friday's going to be good, and then Saturday is going to be slate noon, 4 and 8, kind of like what they have done with the college football playoff, having another New Year's 6 bowl game at noon and then doing the 4 and the 8 slot for the other 2 games. They're doing that with this. So that Friday to Saturday, it's going to be awesome and just full of football. Then you move on to the next round. And this is where those buys take place, right? So they're going to, and according to the reports, they're going to take into account traditional conference relationships with the Bulls. So if Georgia's subject to, so for example here, the quarterfinal games where the buys are going to be. Tuesday night, 7:30 is going to be the Fiesta Bowl this time. Wednesday, January 1st, you're going to have the Peach Bowl at 1 o'clock on ESPN, the Rose Bowl at 5 o'clock on ESPN, and the Sugar Bowl at 8:45 p.m. on ESPN. If Georgia wins the SEC championship and they are the top 4 seeds, I think that they would just get the Peach Bowl, but it could be the Sugar Bowl as well. If Georgia, let's say Georgia's the number 1 seed, they're 13-0 heading into the college football playoff, the SEC championship, or even 12-1, and they're the 1. They're either going to get that Sugar Bowl or that Peach Bowl. Probably the Peach just off of geographic stuff, be a 1 o'clock game. That's how they're going to do it. It's going to be the 1 will kind of get first priority of, okay, we're going to place them either in the Sugar, the Rose, the Peach, or the Fiesta. It will be to their geographical advantage. So that's what that would mean for Georgia. You win one of those games, well, you know how the semifinals are on a rotation basis, and each year 2 of them rotated in. These are the semifinals each year with those New Year's Six Bowl. Well, now the rotation for these at least 2 years, because I only think the 12 teams are going to last 2 years. There's going to be 4 for those quarterfinals and then 2 for the semifinals. This year, just as last year, the semifinals are, or not just as last year, but just as a few years ago, the semifinals will be the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl. So if Georgia wins that game, you can end up playing. Now, it's possible to play a home playoff game. It's possible to play multiple New Year's Six caliber games and a national championship in a college football playoff. That is a gauntlet of a schedule to go along with what Georgia's already got to deal with during the regular season, Texas, Bama, Ole Miss, etc., etc. It's going to be tough. And then so those semifinals are going to be, 8-9 days later, Thursday, January 9th at 7:30 p.m. the Orange Bowl, and then Friday, January 10th, 7:30 p.m., the Cotton Bowl, and then 10 days later, Monday, the 20th, January 20th, is going to be the national championship. This year, it's going to be in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. So what does it mean for Georgia? They could win a championship in their home state. That's what it means for Georgia. Thanks for watching.